Hey guys, and welcome back to So You Say You're Married. Today I have an amazing guest with me. Her name is Genevieve Nicholas, and she is all the way from Australia, living over here in the US with us now. And she has been absolutely fantastic to talk to, a total delight in the conversations that we've already had. And I can't wait for you guys to meet her. So to give you a brief overview of who I am real quick for any of Genevieve's followers that have no idea who I am and who's speaking, my name is Kodi Mann. I am a certified marriage coach, and I help younger married couples overcome the marital trials and strife that come with the first 7-year marriage gauntlet. So with that being said, Genevieve, I am going to let you take it from here and tell people about your mindset and accountability business that you got going on.
Awesome. Well, that was an amazing introduction. Thanks, Kodi. And look, I completely second that. I have so loved our interaction together. It's just been completely amazing. I feel like we're just two twin souls, somehow just sort of connected in some shape, way or form. So yeah, totally loving it. But yeah, I really appreciate being able to come on here and share a little bit about who I am to your followers, and explain my background and how I've gotten into coaching, in particular as a mindset and accountability coach, because that is the niche that I've fallen into at this point, which I'm absolutely loving. And perhaps later on I might share with you what my next step is going to be, because that kicks off next week.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, so let's stay tuned for that one. But let me jump into this. Yes, look, I am an Australian and I do live over here in Texas. And basically, my background is 20 plus years in corporate. I've spent a lot of time in the middle management ranks, or, you know, that mid-level executive. I'm not too sure what you would call it here in the US, but in Australia, it's mid-management ranks. And then I've also run my own businesses. I've been involved in franchises, being an owner-operator for 5 years with 5 stores, which are similar to Starbucks with short order cooking. And I had a staff of 300, or should I say an extra family of children of 300, because that's what it was like being a franchise owner. And from there, I moved into accounting, and I got my master's in accounting and worked as a corporate accountant.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny that, because like when I look at my journey here, and when we talk about coaching, I know you'll relate to this really well, because, you know, coaching is where you're at now and where you're going. That's what we focus on. And corporate accounting is the same way. It's about, you know, budgeting, and it's about future costs. It's not about historical accounting. And, you know, let's look at the P&L and let's analyze what has been. Well, we can't change what has been, but we can change what's going to happen going forward. And you know, I think that when I look at that, I think about all these little nuances here as to how I've ended up where I'm at. And it's like, wow, they're all sort of interconnected. But yeah, so, you know, as a corporate accountant, that was terrific. I really enjoyed that. And then my husband dropped that bombshell. Let's move to the US. So, wow.
Surprise.
Two kids in, well, elementary school, as you guys would know, primary school for me, one dog, 2 kids and a husband, and let's pack up and go. And that's what we did. And that was nearly 8 years ago now. For a 2-year stint, we're still here and loving it. So yeah, and that was, you know, that's been a really interesting time. I think that's really where things have really evolved a lot from my point of view. And being someone that was you know, I've worked for corporate, I've worked for local government, I've worked for myself in franchising. And, you know, I had my own startup. I had a bookkeeping company as well in Australia that I ran. I was a bookkeeper on the side as well. So I had clients for that.
You're a busy woman.
I love it. I thrive on the busyness. But that being said, I think it really was a really pivotal moment for me coming here, because I had to sit down and take some stock as to what was I going to do next.
Right.
And as an expat moving to the US, I wasn't allowed to work here until I had a work visa. And so that what that looked like was 2 years of being in the home.
Wow.
Yeah. And for someone that has worked a lot, and, all my jobs have been full-time roles. And then I was, full-time with my own company and studying. That was really, plus 2 kids, that's pretty busy. And then to go from that to nothing is again, it takes some mindset work, right? All of a sudden,
Huge.
what is this busy person doing? Because I've never really been the stay-at-home mum. I didn't have those options basically in Australia. So I don't live in regret, but it was kind of nice initially to be able to drive my kids to school and to really embrace that whole thing. And I do say that I was continuing. I had to finish off my studies a little bit as well. I still had a year to go. So it was nice to be able to do that. But, this whole mindset work, I would say, started around about that time, because I needed to think about what it was that I wanted to do and who was I, because all of a sudden it felt like everything was stripped away. It was all very raw. And I had to sit down and go, who in the heck am I? I mean, I've always been a mum, I've always been a wife, but what is it that I want? Where do I want to go? What am I going to do? What does this look like? And to stop the panic of, I don't want my resume to look like I've got this 2-year gap and I never had a child in that time. So how am I going to explain it to somebody? So that's where my work started. My own self-development started, a good, probably a year after we sort of got here, I started to find my feet. And that's when I started to really look into myself and who was I and what was I doing. And, amongst that time, I actually ended up getting into direct sales, thinking that, perhaps this is where I need to go. And yes, I'm still in it, but it's more organic now. It really didn't kind of float my boat as much as I thought it might. And then
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, it just wasn't a fit for me. And I still had a lot to learn too. I've grown so much since the start of getting into that, one of the companies, and I'm with 2, but I think the real key here was when I actually got my first coach, and I had absolutely no idea what a coach was. No clue. And I think do you feel that? Do you find that you talk to people and that you go from never having had a coach before to this, like, I don't really know what this is going to be about. Is it going to be a bit woo-woo? Is it really worth it?
Are you feeding me a bunch of fluff, or is this something I'm really going to get some value out of? Yeah, I had the same reaction when I got my first coach. I was like, all right, we'll see how this goes, because he was doing a free program. It was kind of like his practicum in a way to graduate with his life coaching certification. So it's like, sure, I'll do it for free, because I don't know if I'd really invest money into this hokiness. And then afterwards it was life-changing, obviously, because here I am, and it's totally different than what people expect or what people realize. But it's hard for people to buy into a lot of the terms that we use and the strategies that we use, because it's unorthodox and it's an alternative to the traditional things that people are familiar with in society.
Correct. And that's where I think they get stuck between this whole, what's the difference between a coach, a therapist, a consultant,
counselor,
a mentor. I mean, we could sit here and go through all these words, right? And yes, there are some similarities along the way, but then there are very marked differences between the lines we step over.
Yes, so true.
So yeah, I think, to be honest with you, it was when I engaged my first coach, and the reason I did that was, I was exactly at a place where I really was stuck. I was so stuck. I tried everything, and I engaged her because my direct sales business wasn't going anywhere, and I'd done all the trainings, and I'd done all the things, and I downloaded all the freebies, and I'd shown up to everything, and I was using the lingo they teach you, and zip.
Yep.
Nothing was working. And I got to a point where it was like, I need to do something, and I'm no quitter. So that's what was really getting to me, was the fact that I'm not a quitter, but I don't know what this next step is. Like, what am I missing? So I met my coach in another group, And we had a conversation, and she said, look, I'm a business coach, and, let's have a conversation. We did a discovery call, but it was very loose.
Mm-hmm.
And I signed up with her for 6 weeks, I think it was. And wow, that was the start of how I've ended up where I am today. I mean, it's really interesting, right? So I'm an empath. I completely love people. I mean, I've been around people forever. I mean, all of my work has been in the service industry apart from accounting.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's still service industry related, but in local government, it's very much internal customers, not external. But, in all the other businesses I've been in, it's been in the food industry. And, I've got obviously staff, but then I've also got external customers too. So I'm very much about, whether I like it or not, I love just helping people. And, I just love talking to people. I love hearing their stories, and I like being able to, if I'm asked, of course you have a natural conversation and you might share this or share that. And having been in the roles that I've been in, I've trained people, I've mentored people, I've developed managers, and things like that. So when I started to work with this coach, this next sort of progression was, ultimately, I think I need to get into coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is where it was heading. I mean, I originally hired her because I'd lost my passion, and Spark helped me get my direct sales business going again. And I just went, no, I'm completely wanting to do this coaching thing. I feel like I've been doing it pretty much all my life in the workforce. Yep. And I want to just go full bore and jump the gate, like let the ding ding on the race horses go, and I'm out that gate. That's who I am. That's kind of where I went. So yeah, that's exactly what I did. And I'm actually, so I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. I was just going to ask you, so why specifically mindset and accountability?
Okay, so the reason I've loosely put my title as a life business coach, because predominantly, that's the calling in terms of people that I've connected with, have predominantly had issues that are fairly, well, they're either business related or they're fairly generic.
Sure.
And for want of a better word, I've just gone, well, I'll say life business coach. But from a niching point of view, what I really find or have found with these clients, and even myself, like when I look at the work that I've done on myself, and I've had 3 coaches, since my first one, and a lot of the work or a lot of the issues that have come up through my own self-development and these clients have been not what they're coming to me with, but the underlying, cause is their mindset. It's their framework. That's where it really begins. It's like building the house, and you can't build the house. You can't put the roof on if the walls aren't up, and you can't put the walls up if you don't have that concrete foundation that's a strong footing. Because at the first obstacle, or say the first gust of wind, the house is going to blow down. And the same goes with people. No matter what that issue is you're coming to me with, this is what I'm finding, is that they're coming to me saying, well, I'm stuck in my business. Just like me, I was stuck in a business. So they're stuck where they're at, or they've got an issue with, I don't know where to go with this career that I want to take. I don't know. I want to work on leadership at work, but I don't really know where to go with this. And when you start digging and asking questions about these things that are coming up for them, it just comes all the way back in to mindset and what they're saying, like what's happening to the stories they're telling themselves, predominantly ego and fear. Like fear is a big one that comes up, and I love to talk about ego and some fun stuff about that, because I make it quite fun and exciting. But yeah, it's just the framework. It's like, let's talk about, how do you manage your mindset? At what point do you actually sit down and take stock of where you're at, what your thoughts are throughout the day. Where are you being versus doing? And a lot of people are so gung-ho on doing, and perhaps we should explain this because maybe some people listening today don't understand the difference between being and doing. So doing's easy. Doing is all that stuff you write down on a to-do list. You know, we just go, right, here's my goal and here's the to-do list and off I go, or here's the project and boom, 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 phone calls, emails, spreadsheets, you know, you name it, they're off running.
And it's usually busy work. It's not usually productive.
Yeah. You know, a lot of the time, when you look back at corporate careers, for those of us that have been in one, and you have, and I have,
yep.
I feel like that whole doing was just this never-ending wheel that I was stuck in. I used to refer to it, I actually used to refer to mine as a carousel. And it's like, oh, can they just stop the carousel? Because, you know, I've got this natural affinity with horses, so everything's got to have a horse in it. So, you know, this carousel, it was like, can someone just stop the carousel just for a minute? I just need to just get off and take a break. Have a pause.
Yep. You keep going in that never-ending, mindless, rotating circle. And have you noticed, though, when you have your clients that come in and you're starting to work on your mindset, how often are they actually self-aware of their own actions?
They're not.
Exactly. I have yet to encounter a single client who has taken the time to really evaluate their own actions in their own mind. And so when they start talking, they're like, oh, and there's one aha moment, you know, and then they'll talk some more. Oh, I didn't know that about myself, you know, and you hear that so much when you get them to start talking and you're just asking them questions to kind of shift their perspective a little bit. And it's so rewarding. But it's also, it's hilarious sometimes because you hear them go, oh my God. You know? And it's like the light bulb went off.
Exactly. But I think, you know, you and I have both been through that stage, right? Where it was, you know, because you've got to start somewhere. So when you start exploring these things yourself and you start developing these things yourself and becoming more highly attuned to it, you know, you remember what you felt like when it was sort of first thrust at you. So yeah, so coming back, like talking about, you know, those initial reactions, like I just recall, and I'm sure you can recall that moment when you first had that reaction, and it really is mind blowing.
Yes. And it's life changing too, because I remember talking to my first coach and I was asking him questions, trying to find my own direction. I was in a very similar place as you when I sought out my first coach, because I was kind of stuck and I was looking for a career transition, trying to get out of corporate and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, because I was tired of just making money for someone else. Because I kept thinking there's got to be so much more to life than this. There's got to be more than this. And that's when I started seeking out help of some sort. I didn't even know what life coaching was. I didn't know that there were even niches inside of life coaching. And I happened to find it when I was job searching. And long story short, I went down that rabbit hole, got a hold of my coach, and suddenly my perspective just went from here to like here. It just boomed. And now, so whenever I'm talking to people, whether I'm in coach mode or not, you find yourself still asking those perspective questions that you go through when you're coaching, and trying to get people to kind of take a different perspective inside casual conversation, because you want them to feel that enlightenment, whether it's a formal, you know, interview, client call, coaching call, whatever you want to call it, or not. And it's fantastic, because a lot of my friends have even said, wow, I've never really thought about it that way. You're good.
Might have said exactly the same thing as well, because I think it now becomes quite natural. Not that I want to put the coach hat on when I'm talking to my friends, but the way I inquire about things now when they say something, particularly, you know, depending on whatever the issue is, because friends talk about problems, right? And they'll talk about great stuff, and then they'll talk about what's going on in their life. And I think as soon as that problem comes up, that all of a sudden my ears turn on, and it's like, ooh, you know, I'd like to explore this. And you're right, I'll go down a few things, and then they'll go the same thing. I didn't look at it like, oh, you're so clever. It's like, Well, I wasn't intending to be, but it's just as soon as that happens, it's like a different switch goes off in my mind. And I'm like, no, I think that it would be really important for them to look at it a bit differently. And I'm able to hopefully help them
Right.
wherever they're going, because that's what it's all about, right? It's helping and it's supporting, and it's just a really beautiful relationship that you can add some more value to as a friend, as well as
Mm-hmm.
obviously your clients that you work with.
Exactly. And driving off of that, part of the reason we're here together is because we saw some alignment between mindset and relationships, right? And how that mindset can really help marriage. It can really help any kind of relationship, really. It doesn't have to be a romantic one that you're in, because you're able to take on the perspective of the person that you're in the relationship with. I'm going to use husband and wife just for ease and understanding. But so when you're in a relationship and you have communication issues, for example, you don't always necessarily step off into your spouse's shoes to understand what they're saying or how they're saying it. And changing that mindset and doing that mindset work on you internally first really changes the whole playing field when it comes to your marriage and your relationship. So I wanted to get your perspective on that and what your thoughts were with your mindset work yourself, and then how it affects couples and their marriages.
Yeah, look, it's just so powerful. I think what you've just said there is huge, because
Mm-hmm.
I think once you get to know yourself better, and
Mm-hmm.
you understand who you are, and you feel very strong and very comfortable within yourself, and accepting of the fact that, sure, none of us are perfect. I mean,
Right.
that's a whole other discussion for another
Wait, you're not
day.
perfect? I'm not perfect? What?
Yeah, no. I'm a recovering perfectionist, but like I said, that's a whole other thing for another day.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, I think once you start to really get into your own mind, you're thinking about yourself, you're honing into what you say,
Mm-hmm.
how it comes out, what your thoughts are, and listening. You're in a, we touched upon this before. It's that being space. It's not all of a sudden you stop doing and you start being, you start going into your own mindful kind of area and thinking more about
Mm-hmm.
what's happening around you, who you are, how you're impacting people around you. And this is not just about just common human decency. This is a lot deeper than that.
So something that I like to teach is the power of reflection, right? Because you have to change what's going on inside of you before you really are able to make great changes out in the world around you. And that's projected on other people in your life. That's projected on the things that you do, the tasks that you do yourself, the results that you achieve. And one thing that I like to teach to kind of get people's attention is when you point, you've got your index finger pointed out at the world, and you're kind of, that's when you're pointing your blame. It's your fault that I'm like this. It's your fault that this happened to me. It's your fault. So you play the victim mentality. But what you're not paying attention to is the three fingers pointing back at you on the reasons why you
Mm-hmm.
got to that place where you're pointing your blame in the first place. So, there's two different types of people in the world. There's the victim that is always pointing the blame, always finding a reason for something else to have caused the situation that they're in. It can never be their fault. And then there's the person who is the achiever, the one that is always going, well, okay, that happened, but how can I change that? What can I do to make that better? How can I use that to my advantage? It's always internalizing things to where they use it for their own leverage. And then they project that positivity or that result back out in the world that is totally different than just playing victim and seeing no movement forward at all. And that is a lot of what coaching teaches inside of the mindset spectrum, is understanding. That's why it's so important to understand the change inside of yourself before you can actually see change in other people and change in your life. That's where it's powerful.
Absolutely, completely agree with you. And I have to say that, one of the funny things when we talk about relationships, or
Mm-hmm.
that's your area of expertise. So I know that you're going to love this one. When I started doing a lot of this self-development work, particularly mindset work, etc. And let me just tell you let me just stop for a second and just tell you a quick backstory here.
Sure.
My husband is a very big advocate of Tony Robbins, loves Tony Robbins, right? And he follows him and he does a lot of his online stuff and courses. And my husband is very big on development, communication, very much in tune with your higher self and always standing for your higher self. I'm sure that, you know, he was like 20, there's not a 20-year age gap between us, but he's like 20 years was ahead of me in terms of development. And anyway, so when I started doing, you know, this work on myself, it's interesting how he sort of come about and said, wow, I'm really impressed with the changes in you. Like, it's so noticeable. Like, you know, you are really growing and developing into the person you're meant to be. And this is terrific. And it was like, wow, because it's not something you can necessarily, again, we're talking intangible qualities here. It's very, you can't put your finger on it. It's not a piece of paper, right? So you can feel it. It's not a
quantity. Yeah.
Yeah, you can feel it, but it's really interesting, particularly when your partner says something to you that they recognize that, because this is a person that you're with all the time. This is the person you're with most likely, I don't know, what, 90% of the time, maybe 80% of the time, depending on, you know, what your work life's like. But yeah, they see you every day and they've seen you. It's a bit like, you can tell it with friends because you don't see them as often. Like if they've had a new haircut, it's pretty obvious. Or if there's something that's changed, you can kind of feel it. But when you're with someone all the time, you don't necessarily notice.
There are a lot more subtle changes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was a really interesting thing from a relationship point of view, that he actually noticed that, which
it's amazing. Okay, so from a man's standpoint, the fact that he's already doing that stuff is one, props to you.
Well, hey, nothing on me, that's all on him.
Yeah, but you're married to him, so that counts. Props to you for finding a man that's willing to do that, for one. And then two, though, it's good on him that he is willing to recognize that and then continue to support you through it. So he must be really excited about your business and what you're doing as far as your mindset work, especially helping others with it.
Totally. Like, you know, he's very, very supportive. You know, his background is very much similar to mine, and that's how we met. So yeah, my husband's been really supportive with me with the business, particularly because, you know, he's very big on obviously this development and growth as a person and individually, and it's one of the things that he's even pushed. I shouldn't say pushed. It's a really bad word. He's
encouraged.
Thank you. That's a great one. He's encouraged. He's encouraged. You know, even that upon our children. You know, very much so that they think about that sort of growth and whatever. But that being said, his background has been in training and management, and so he's really, you know, he's a great complement to what I do, because even though I've been in training too, he's been at a much higher level than I have. So to be able to come up with some of the strategies and to talk these things through, and particularly to talk about programs and stuff, he's a great sounding board. So we have some really interesting discussions.
Oh, I bet. I'd love to be a fly on the wall for some of those, because I bet the brainstorming just goes through the roof when you two get started.
Yeah, it does. It does. Mind you, I can get a bit frustrated. So perhaps I have to say, I wonder where you were at, you know, the 5-year mark of my marriage. I mean, we're at the 21-year mark now together, but
see, you survived it.
We sure did. We sure did. I've got some battle scars, so has he, but yeah, we did.
That's why I call it the gauntlet. The first 7 years are the gauntlet, because some couples, and you know, you always come out with some battle scars, but some couples come out with more than others, you know, and some haven't even hit it yet, and they might hit it at the 10-year mark, and well, props to them if they wait that long, you know, but it is a gauntlet.
It is. And I have to wonder if, if you started some of this inner work on yourself and your mindset, what would it be like before you even got to a point of getting married? Like, would you be entering your marriage with it, completely in a different perspective?
Mm-hmm. I think so. And I think people, if they did that mindset work earlier, I think they would date a lot longer. I really do. And my husband and I, when we first started dating, we moved in together 2 weeks after we started dating, and we were together
Wow.
24/7. Literally, we worked together, we spent our off time together, and we lived together. There wasn't a moment where we weren't together 24/7. And we went through a lot of those 1 to 3 year trials and tribulations that couples go through in the first 6 months. So we did everything on an accelerated level. And it is, if I had had that mindset training, that acceleration wouldn't have been quite as painful in some places. Thank God my husband has the patience of Job. He really does. But it also, I think people would date longer. I made Colby wait 2 years before I told him. I said, look, I know we know we're going to get married. I know we've decided that. There's no question of that. But I want to make sure that while we're living together, you brushing your teeth is not going to put me over the edge. Like we got to know this is concrete, because I'm not signing a contract and planning an exit strategy. Like, this is permanent, So we dated for a good solid 2 years beforehand, but we spent all that time together. There wasn't dating where, he lives here and I live here and we see each other 2 times a week. So we accelerated that. In reality, that probably would have been about a 4-year dating span that a normal couple would have gone through before they dated. And I think if you go through that mindset work, that's exactly what you would do, is you would wait, because you would have to sit there and go, okay, I need my partner to catch up, or I need my partner to gain that perspective. How is their growth going to go? What am I going to do? What is he going to do? I think a lot of those questions would be asked more, instead of just allowing your emotions to run with things and take over.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's a really good touch point there in terms of emotions. I think it's more about the emotions that you seem to be trying to tackle and wade through, versus really taking a good look at, who am I and what do I stand for, and what are my values, and what do I think, and what do I feel, and how am I being? And then what about this other person that I'm with, who I'm going to, spend the rest of my life with? Because to be honest, we don't get married to think about getting a divorce, right? I know that's a whole other discussion that you could have.
Yeah, we could go on that one for a while.
Yeah, but typically, I don't know of anyone that initially gets married thinking about divorce. They think it's for life. They're in love, and there's that talk about honeymoon phases and stuff. But if you really took that time to work through things and really get to know each other, and really get to know the core being of that person, as much as you can, versus it's all about, I've got to go out for dates, and I've got to meet their friends, and I've got to be into their family. So,
and you're
when
on
you
a
think,
timeline.
yeah, I've got, we've been dating for X amount of time, so therefore we should say I love you, and then we should do this, and then we should do that. And, people are asking us, oh, you guys have been together for 18 months, when are you getting married, and when are you moving in, and when are you having babies, and when are you having second babies? The whole list goes on. But if we spent that time being rather than doing all this stuff, and, something really interesting comes up for me as we talk about this, because I'm sure in your line of work, you've come across a number of personality type quizzes and things like that. And I don't know if there's any that you think or recommend, perhaps, that are really good starting points. One for me that comes to mind is the Myers-Briggs one. And I did that. I was already married, of course, but didn't do it before marriage, but did it after marriage. And that was actually a really good basis for us to sort of have some discussions around things, as to sort of go, oh, I didn't know that about you. And the same kind of thing, it was really kind of insightful, particularly to understand some of his mind, because let's be honest, men and women are different.
Yes, completely.
So do you have any quizzes or anything like that come to mind?
The first one I like to tell everyone that is either thinking about a relationship, dating in a relationship, learn their love language. So take your love language quiz. There's plenty out there. They're all pretty much the same. You know, you've only got 5 love languages that you're really going to work with, and all of them are that I've taken 7 of them, I can think right now, just to kind of see about consistency, and all of them come out pretty darn close. So go find a good love language quiz. Google will pop out the first top 3. Click on one, but you need to understand your spouse's love language imperatively, because if you don't, then that's a great pivotal point where your communication is going to go downhill, because your needs are not going to be met. If you don't know the love language, you can't meet each other's needs. So there's going to be lacking. My love language is time, for example. If you spend time with me, if you give me your time, that is the most valuable thing I think that you can give me. And I value that beyond words, because you can't get that back. And I think that is so important. So my husband, when he spends quality time with me, even if it's just us sitting on the couch reading books together, that's his time, and it means so much to me. His, on the other hand, are words of affirmation. He loves to hear, great job, honey. Thank you for doing the dishes. Thank you for vacuuming the house. Thank you for repairing the fence out at the barn. He loves to hear that kind of encouragement, that appreciation. And I know that, and he knows that. But before, when we were dating and we didn't know what those things were, he was telling me those things, and he was giving me those words of affirmation, which were nice, but it wasn't fulfilling my need. Now, granted, we spent all of our time together, so it wasn't like I was lacking in that department, but I didn't understand that he needed words of affirmation. So we were spending all of our time together, and I thought that he understood, if I'm spending my time with you, then you've got it, man. You're golden. And that wasn't necessarily the case. So we actually sat down and had a conversation about that when we were early on in our relationship about, okay, are you getting what you need from me? Are you happy? What do we got to do? And that's when we learned how to communicate. It was one of the beginning steps of learning how to communicate with each other, is expressing what each of us needs. And later we ended up taking our own love language quizzes and confirming what we had found out through kind of that trials and tribulations. But if you want to fast forward through that, take the love language quiz. The Enneagram is another good one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you taken the Enneagram?
I have, but I can't even remember what I am.
I think I'm a 7. So I'm an extremely confrontational, difficult individual, according to the Enneagram. But, it doesn't make you feel good about yourself, but it is extremely accurate at the same time.
Yeah. I think, they're really good to give you some insight, very much so. And, it's like anything, you don't want to sort of hang your hat on it, but I think it's a really good starting point for everybody to do something in terms of for relationships, definitely. And I have to say, I've never done the love language quiz. So that's definitely something I think I need to take away and do that. Michael and I should do that, and it'll be really interesting to see what comes out.
It is quick. Most love language quizzes are between 5 and 7 minutes long. They don't, it's not like Myers-Briggs where you're taking a couple hours. That's pretty in-depth. It's phenomenal, and it's definitely worth it, but you need to block off some time to be able to complete that one. The love language you could knock out on a 15-minute break at work if you needed to, just to figure something out about yourself and about your spouse.
Yeah.
So it's extremely powerful.
No, that's I think that's definitely something I'm going to take away and do that.
Yeah.
That'll be really good fun. It'll be interesting. But, again, when we come back to this whole relationships and mindset and stuff, just one other thing I want to share with you before perhaps maybe we just jump into quickly talking about accountability, because we haven't even discussed how that fits into everything. But one of the things my husband actually introduced this. So again, kudos to him. So we had, he's come up with some really good ideas here, but the kids were young, they were in school, but they were in, primary school or elementary school. And, we were both working full time, and we found that we never had those, typical couple family, you never get to have a conversation, because you're always getting interrupted constantly about, somebody's fighting, or they want this or they want that. And, you're coming home from work and there's just no cohesiveness and communication happening that's dedicated. So he came up with a sign that he had made, and it was called Marriage in Progress. And we told the children that, you know, mum and dad are going to hang this sign up on the door. We're outside, we're going to have a drink, and we're going to be out there for 30 minutes. And we're having a discussion. This is our time. So do not interrupt us unless somebody's dead. Now, it took a little while.
That's pretty clear.
Yeah, it took a little while for people to understand that that was our time, but the sign went up, and eventually, you know, we got to have our 30 minutes of either dump, vent, whatever we needed to do together as adults. And, you know, the kids learned that that was mum and dad time. And, you know, that wasn't taking away anything from the family and stuff like that, but it just allowed us to just regroup. Sometimes we didn't really talk about anything much. It was just whatever. Other times, yeah, we needed to talk about stuff, and other times we might sort of start a heated discussion that would have to sort of finish a bit later. But, you know, irrespective of that, I thought that that was such a really good tool in terms of from a marriage and communication and just finding that space. And I think, you know, even in my own mind, I mean, obviously at that time I wasn't really doing any mindset work, mind you, but when I look back on that, I think that was really good for us in terms of trying to at least share some of what we both needed. We were in a space of not doing, we were in a space of togetherness and communicating and, you know, really just being. We weren't like hammering a tool or painting a fence, you know. We were sitting there having a drink together and just letting it flow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you set up boundaries. Boundaries are so important, and you have to have them, or I don't care how close you are to the person, it gets irritating, you know, for that's a kind word sometimes.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. But let's dive into you had a good point. Let's dive into your accountability side on things and explain that a little bit.
Well, you know, where accountability came from was very much about reflecting upon moving out of the corporate world where you are accountable to so many people. So when you're working in a job, you're accountable to everyone, you know, your boss, your colleagues, teams, you name it, you're accountable. But when you work for yourself, who are you accountable to? You're only accountable to yourself and potentially clients or customers, but they don't necessarily come and wave a stick at you or say, hey, you know, how are you going on that project? Really, you've got to hold yourself accountable. And that's really difficult. I think that's been a struggle in some aspects of what I've done. And I've seen that, you know, even when I wasn't, you know, when I was a bookkeeper and even as a franchise owner, like as much as I knew a lot about working in franchises and things like that, you know, when you're an owner, it's a whole other ball game. So, but more to the point, it's the accountability when you're solo, when you're a solopreneur, whatever that looks like. That's where this accountability comes in. And I've seen, and I know that I needed that. And that was that was a big piece of what was missing, in my opinion, when I was when I was working really hard in my direct sales. And when I look back in my bookkeeping business, I didn't have that accountability. I didn't have somebody there to do it. Now, I know in coaching, we talk a lot about accountability, and no one can hold you accountable to something. Like, you commit to something. So what does accountability really look like? Because at the end of the day, as coach to client, I can ask them what their commitments are, but then I'm going to obviously ask a person, well, how can I support you with that? And I think accountability sort of, you know, slides a lot into the support element, and it's that support behind it. Now, you know, it would probably sound a bit funny if I go, I'm a mindset and support coach. Like, what are you supporting? I'm holding up your mind. So I think it comes back to that accountability. Like, they're saying, I have X, Y, and Z to do. And what's that going to look like? How can I stay on track and on task without, you know, you holding a stick? And I'm not going to hold a stick. I mean, at the end of the day, it's your business. You've got to do it. But I can support you. And what does that support look like? And I think it's that community of support. So one of the things that I did with a team member, and we've been doing it now for 3 years. I can't believe it's been 3 years. Her and I are accountability partners. And, you know, what that looks like is more like support.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much support. You know, we've talked every week. I'll say 99% of the time it's been every week for the last 3 years.
That's impressive.
Yeah. And, you know, obviously we didn't know each other. When we started this, we met at a convention, and we kind of, you know, had a few chats and whatever. Accountability was thrown around at this convention, and it was probably, you know, the word of the week or whatever it was. And anywho, we basically said to each other, hey, you know, do you want to be accountability partners? And we went, yeah, why not? Let's see what this looks like. And, you know, we've developed that relationship over time.
Mm-hmm.
And what it looks like today is very different to how we started. But that support has been amazing for both of us. And just being able to lean on someone else a little bit and just sort of talk about things that are happening and share our goals. So, you know, one of the things we would do is we would check in with each other, and we would text. We kind of went in and out of this, but this is why I say it's a bit of accountability, a bit of support. But I think just the fact that there was somebody there.
Yeah.
And, you know, what does that look like? Because, look, I mean, how do you feel? I mean, how do you feel about, you know, working for yourself? And I know you have a really supportive husband, but that being said, you know, there's lots of things that you want to do and get done. But so how do you maintain some form of accountability to getting all of that work done?
That's a really good question, because some days I'm not even sure how I maintain my own accountability. I think it's just, I'm a big list maker, and I have my goal calendar that is my daily planner of the things I'm going to get done each day. And once I write those down, that's set in stone. That's concrete. It has to get done. So that kind of holds me accountable in and of itself, because I feel terrible if I look at that visual and I see that date and it's not done. But really what holds me accountable more than anything is not going back to corporate. Now that we're talking about it, it's not going back to corporate. It's not getting back in that 9 to 5. And the only way to make that work is to show up every single day. And then it's the passion that I have for my clients, because I run into so many couples out in town or wherever on trips that are struggling with communication issues and whatnot, or have been divorced before the age of 25 or been divorced before the age of 30. And it sounded like it was just a communication issue. It could have been avoided. I don't know if you can hear this, but my husky is talking hardcore outside my door.
Have you got a husky as well?
Yes, I
So
do.
do I.
And
So do I.
oh, do you? Oh, wonderful. So you understand when he's sitting here going at you. So he's outside my office door right now. My husband's not home, so no one's there to let him out, and he's telling me all about it. But he's just going to have to wait. He'll have to be patient. He also holds me accountable. This is him giving my accountability lecture right now. But yes, going back to accountability and what holds me accountable, it's definitely probably the passion for my clients and then staying out of the 9 to 5. Those two things drive me the most. Now, when I first got started with my business, though, I was doing it as like a side hustle, because I really had no idea. At the time, I was a general life coach. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what niche I was going to go into. It's kind of just getting my feet wet. So the accountability was only really there if I had a client call. Outside of that, I was just kind of like, I don't really know what to do with myself, and I don't know how to handle running a business. I've never done this before. So I think the accountability also comes with maturity, and it comes with growth as you learn things and kind of figure out that direction. A lot of things, what I'll do with my clients when we're working on accountabilities at the end of a session is I'll ask them, okay, who do you have that can be an accountability partner for you throughout the week, who can help you stay on track with your things? And if you don't have that person, then when do you want me? It's not, would you like me to? It's when do you want me to check in with you throughout the middle of the week to make sure you're staying on track with things, and just checking in on you and kind of holding your hand until you're able to gain that maturity and that backbone that you need, that you have to grow into with accountability to do it on your own, so you don't need that throughout the week. And you can come back to the next session going, hey, I really rocked at this, or, hey, I struggled at this. I tried, but I struggled at this. But either way, you showed up, you
Yeah.
know? And I think maturity has a lot to do with that too.
Yeah, that's true, actually. I think because I've never really had a side hustle per se at all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sorry, I have, but like younger. Um, and we talk about maturity. So I think if I'd had a side hustle maybe in my 20s or 30s, that whole thing might have looked different in terms of what I think and what I, how I see it. But for me, there was no level of accountability in terms of my upline, if you want to call it that, in direct sales. I mean, that's really where it started. It was feeling very alone, and I know that there was, there's always a lot of talk that you're not working. You might be working for yourself, but not by yourself. And yes, there was a lot of support in terms of groups and large groups and masterminds and whatever else that was going on at the time. But I feel that what might have been nice to begin with is what I ended up forging with somebody else, is to at least have that level of somebody checking in with you.
Right.
Because you don't know what you don't know. And this is the hard part when you're trying to work things out. And I'm not just talking about direct sales. It doesn't really matter what it is. In your line of work, working with couples and talking about, issues that they might be having in relationships and what have you, we all need that level of support around what it is we're going to do or commit to do in a different way. It looks different for everyone. There's no one size fits all here, but whatever that looks like, I think you have to either be mature enough to recognize you need the support and ask for it. And a lot of people don't do that. And I think whether they're mature or not, whether they're old or not, it doesn't really matter. I think there's some people that are very good about asking for that assistance. And people that are too afraid to, for whatever reason, that they might look stupid, or people will think, why don't you know that?
It looks like a weakness to some people.
Absolutely. So, this is where I talk, I really feel that accountability is a big thing. So, when I'm looking at my clients, or I'm talking to prospects, not even clients yet, they're prospects, and we're talking a little bit about what it is that I do. One of the things is, I'm going to help them find clarity and their purpose. I'm going to help them set goals, and then I'm going to spur them on into action and hold them accountable. And that accountability is not that I'm going to hold a whip over them, but I'm going to be there as their support person. And it's a bit like riding a bicycle. You start with training wheels, and then you take a wheel off and take a wheel off, and before you know it, you're riding a two-wheeler. It's the same kind of process that goes through that, because whatever we're working on, whatever it is that we're dealing with, and then we start to dig deep and we start to unpack things and, the emotions come out, you need that. And if you don't have somebody else to lean on, well then, the coach's role is to, yes, you can email me and text me and whatever with the support, but what else? Is there anything else you need? Do you need me to send you? They'll share it. It's not for me to tell them what they want, but some of them might say, listen, if just check in with me and just send me if you see an image or a quote or something that reminds you, send me that as just something to just pep me up. Or in one of your social media posts, like this is a client that said this to me, in one of your social media posts, what would be really good to hold me accountable is, can you just talk about that? And I'll see that, and that'll be like, ding, 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 have I done this yet? And that was pretty easy. That was easy for me to do. So, I just think people need that. Not everybody needs it, but it's a big important part of what I believe is necessary for solopreneurs.
Right. And I agree with that. And on that point, I think it also has a lot to do with pain and comfort. So, if the pain points finally outweigh the comfort level, and comfort doesn't necessarily mean you're in a good place or you're happy. Comfort just means familiar. And once you get to the point where the pain outweighs that familiarity, that's when change starts to happen. And that's when you truly get serious about holding yourself accountable and doing tasks and actually getting results from your actions. So I think that has a lot to do with it too. Just like you're talking about with a bicycle, you know, you're not going to be 14 and riding down the street with training wheels. You know, someone's going to stone you for crying out loud for being that old. So you obviously the pain point is going to outweigh the familiarity, and you're going to take those training wheels off so that you can start progressing in life. And I think that has a lot to do with you're holding yourself accountable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's the reason behind why I, you know, push both of those things. I think they're very important, and they're important in all aspects of everything.
Mm-hmm.
In all aspects of it, doesn't matter what you're going through, what you're dealing with, what you're looking for coaching for. I believe mindset work is very much at the forefront of what you need to start with, even though that's not what you necessarily, well, you may not necessarily be going to a coach for your mindset, right? We've already spoken about that, but that's where you need to start. And, you know, the accountability is kind of throughout the whole process.
I agree. Well, Jen, this has been phenomenal. And I believe that we have covered a lot of wonderful information. So I think there's going to be a lot of value here that every listener here should gain from this. So tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Sure. Well, the best way to get in touch with me right now is either through Facebook or Instagram. My website is under construction. So, you know, again, I try to do all the doings, but, you know, everything takes time. So Facebook, my Facebook is Genevieve.Nicholas.
Okay.
And perhaps we can drop that in the comments below, because
yes,
if I was to spell that, people might not hear it all.
It'll be in the show notes, I promise.
And then my Instagram handle is Jen_Nicholas7. So they can find me at either of those. For now, that's the best way to hit me up, check me out, find out what I do, because basically what I share on both handles is that Instagram has a few different highlights there than Facebook, but that's okay. So check me out on that, DM me. And then, you know, if they're interested, I would love to have a chat on. That's basically the next step. If they'd like to work with me, it's book a discovery call with me, and we get together. We basically talk about, you know, each other and feel into the relationship, as I like to call it, and just have a chat about where you're at. And I want to say suss each other out. I don't know if that's an Aussie thing or not, but
I
it's
think
just
it is
coming to me. It doesn't sound very coachy, but yeah, you know, we're just talking. We're developing a relationship to see if we would like to work together. That's really what it's all about.
Finding your fit. Yep. Yep.
Finding your fit.
Well, wonderful. So guys, you heard her. You can reach her on Instagram. You can reach her on Facebook. Send her a direct message if you want to work with an amazing mindset and accountability coach. Clearly, she knows what she's doing, and she'll be able to take you to the next levels. And until next time, Jen, thank you so much for being here and taking the time to do this interview with me. I really appreciate it. As we already know, time is my love language. So I really appreciate you being here. And guys, until next time, we will see you again on So You Say You're Married.